Let me know your thoughts down below. The following post was made by an anonymous user to 4chan's/B board on August 22nd of 2012 at 1:56 p.m. and it reads as follows. Hey/B, I have some creepy OC for you to close out your summer. It's kinda TLDR, but if you can get off your ADD high horse for the 10 minutes or so that it takes me to share this crap, then I think you'll be pleased. Then again, it is summer, so you'll probably just get laid right out of here. I took these pictures earlier today, so there isn't a timestamp. However, to prove that I'm not trolling, here's the exact location where these pictures were taken. Pick related. If you want to call me a liar, then that's fine, but at least have the balls to get down here and prove it yourself. I will commence creepy dumping on the next post. 3 days ago, my last living grandparent, my father's mother, passed away at the age of 89. He was a World War II vet, and my mom tells me that after returning home from the Navy, he was never quite the same. In fact, he was pretty paranoid about nearly everything. I was never really allowed to stay at his house. In 1965, his wife died suddenly with no real explanation. My mother tells me that my grandfather became extremely fearful of nuclear war with the communists, and that he started to dig a bomb shelter out of the rock and limestone on his land. I had never saw the bomb shelter until today. When the family was going through my grandfather's belongings, pick related, it's the entrance. Go on. I had only ever asked my grandfather about his hand-dug cave one time in my life, which is when I was about 16 or so when we got together for Christmas. He didn't really seem to want to talk about it. He just told me to never go in there because it's just a darn blank. What the word in the blank was, I've never been able to figure out. No amount of Googling helped me to determine what he said. All I know is it sounded kind of like ossuary. The way he said it was creepy enough that I never asked about it again. This picture is a view backwards towards the door after you go down some steps. I hadn't even thought about the shelter since then until today, when my mother asked me to go and check it out to see if we could find anything worth putting into the estate sale. To be honest, I was pretty excited. I thought I'd find some old gas masks, non-perishable food items from the 60s, and maybe even some forms of entertainment that he had planned to use to keep the family busy in the event of an attack. This picture is the first hallway, which curves off to the right at the end. The first thing I found was this rudimentary toilet. Of course, time wasn't kind to it, so there isn't much left. It had obviously been in disrepair for years. I just snapped a picture of it and kept going. Although I did have time to admire the work that had to have gone into chipping away at the rock, one heave at a time. Bumpin'! But further down the hallway, I came to nothing more than a bunch of old, rusted garbage on the floor. I instantly felt my heart sink because I had such high hopes for what this exploration would yield. It was beginning to look like my grandfather had just given up at some point on his dream of crafting a shelter. Pick related, it's the garbage. But you'll notice that in the first picture, the hallway curves off to the left. I was expecting to hit a flat wall of rock, but instead I found a huge iron door that was padlocked shut. Fortunately for me, it had become incredibly rusted, so I was actually able to just pick up a decent sized rock off the floor and hit the padlock until it busted the entire loop that it went through. Opening the door was another story though. It was extremely heavy and had become rusted shut over the years. I found a shovel back in the garbage heap and used all my strength to force it open with a lever action. Pick related. It's the view after I got the dang thing open. I like where this is going. The only thing back there was a hallway that did abruptly end where he had stopped digging, but there was a doorway off to the right. I went through the doorway and inside this room looked more like a cavern than a bomb shelter. As I looked around, I noticed this freaking thing carved into the stone. At first I thought, oh no big deal, maybe he just came back here to pray or something. But that's when I started to notice that there were more carvings. Suddenly, I see this face carved into the rock. There were faces everywhere. Seriously, it was as though there were a bunch of ghostly faces staring down at you in that room. Pick related. And here's another example. I noticed that while the previous one appeared to be a soft female face, this one was an angry male face, and there were really quite a few of them. I don't know, probably 6 or 7. They were all carved into the walls as though they had been facing that cross, carving, worshipping it, or something. I happened to look down at the ground below the carving, and there, sitting beneath a bunch of concrete rubble was, you're not going to believe this, a bone. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just a Nancy. This was no deer bone, this was clearly a human bone. My heart was pounding on my chest. As I started to look more closely, I saw more bones coming out of the concrete as though human remains had been dumped in a batch of quick-dry cement or something. Then I could have sworn I heard a quiet laugh from the corner of the room, and I bolted. I ran out of that room like the devil was chasing me. I ran all the way out of the shelter, all the way back to the house. From here on out, I'm now going to be reading the reactions from people who were watching this post back at the time. What the heck, did the post with the bone just get deleted, or is /b just acting up again? These pics have no EXIF, which means existing file online, meaning that they are organic. What the heck, did a mod just delete my last post? Anyway, continue. And then I saw this one. Unlike every single other carving in this room, which were faces, this one was clearly meant to be a skull. It seemed so out of place since I felt that the rest of the room had religious connotations to it. Why was there a skull? Well, I found out soon enough. This would be OP's last post, as we'll get into in a second. Everything else is just people reacting to it. More, some user says. And then another one begins telling people to start screen capping because they need more information and don't want it to be lost. And from there, another anonymous user posts a link to Wikipedia detailing something called an ossuary, and the definition on the page says, an ossuary is a chest, building, well, or site made to serve as the final resting place of human skeletal remains. I wouldn't pronounce it ossuary, but it could plausibly be pronounced something like that or come across like that depending on your accent or dialect of English. Crap, okay, bumped. That took a long time to type out, and someone just knocked at the door. Keep this thread bumped. And after this, OP never appears again on the thread, or as far as we're aware, 4chan at all. No one takes credit for this. And then according to the person who screen capped all of this that we're reading from today, the whole post went 404, meaning it was deleted and no longer existed on 4chan. That being said, you actually can't find this on 4chan today at all, as far as I'm aware. I did try searching for it, which only adds to the mystery. For closer reference, the image that was deleted very, very clearly shows a human bone with some sort of wire wrapped around it, and yeah, appears to be buried in concrete. And if you look close enough, it looks like there could be other ones around it, also in the concrete as well. It is very, very odd, and this is a really strange post in my mind because you can't really refute it. Not only does this guy tell us his entire story, but there's no other files of this at all online for these images. Not to mention this was in 2012, so the editing wasn't possible in the same regard to make this look like there were bones in there. I guess the only other option it could have been is that it could have been staged, but the likelihood of that just seems nil, as in who has a half-dug bunker in their backyard from their grandpa where everything's falling apart and there's a crypt in there with human bones everywhere. Like, it obviously wasn't staged, and AI is not an option because it's 2012. So really the only thing we can make of this is that this is a genuine encounter someone had with some strange and creepy thing their grandpa dug into their backyard. Now, the laugh in the corner of the room is horrifying, because something I thought about when reading this is that whenever you dig a bunker, you obviously have one way in, but you have at least one way back out because you don't want to get sealed in. Say it was from the attack the grandpa was worried about, or someone came by, didn't know what they were doing, and blocked it up and you were in there. Who knows? So you always build another way in, and it's very possible that this OP did hear someone else in there, and perhaps they knew about this other entrance in, or came in when no one was watching. Maybe they lived there, I don't know, but it's kind of hard to wrap my mind around this and how this could have been faked. I would be curious to know what you guys think. Alrighty, I made this video a while back for Patreon, and back then I hadn't thought as much about what this could be, but since then it's been on my mind, and so I decided to re-look for these photos online again, and I used Yandex this time, which often gives you more Russian search results, and I did actually find some, and what was interesting was there were similar photos that I found online on Yandex. They weren't the same, they're very clearly not the same place, but these ones from this Russian website were detailed on a couple of people's blogs, and when you look at them, it is an ossuary, and they're very clearly Christian ones out in Russia somewhere in the middle of nowhere, which made me curious then if there's some Russian connection that this guy's dad has, and if he somehow was involved with Russians in the war. I don't know, but it was very, very bizarre to see because I almost thought it was the same place. That being said, the only thing that had any similar photos were the photos of the faces that were carved into the walls and of the cross carved into the wall. Other than that, all the photos of the doors, the hallways, there were none that were lined, which was pretty bizarre because, like I said, that would make me think that this is quite possibly a legitimate case of someone finding a grandpa's ossuary in his bunker that he hand dug. I do have to wonder then what the grandpa was up to, because there is a certain element of evil there with that skull, and I wonder if the grandpa was worshiping something very dark. I don't know. There's a whole lot of rabbit holes you can go down here, but I really wish we had that photo where he says that he has the location listed. I couldn't find that on any of the online repositories of this situation, and as far as I'm aware, this image that I'm showing you right now is the best compilation of the media we have from it. So as far as I'm aware, like I said, there's nothing left of the original post. If you find it, let me know. But it is bizarre also that you have this guy who's revealing this crazy stuff, and then 4chan goes down for all the people and the thread gets deleted. Thankfully with screen caps, so we know it exists, but still very interesting and very weird, very creepy, which is good for the day. And I hope you guys enjoyed overall. And I really just want to say thank you for the Patreon supporters who made this video possible. And I'm glad it's getting out to you guys now as well. Let me know what you think down below.